And hello out there, everyone in podcast land, and welcome back to the Front Row Podcast, the podcast for people who actually like movies. I am Jeremy Gettner, the editor in chief, and I am so happy to be here with you today because another season of movies is upon us. And as is our tradition here at the Front Row, we are going to give you a preview of all of those movies coming out here in the winter of 2018, 2019. As I said, I'm Jeremy Gettner, and here with me, my good friend, my fellow movie lover, Mr. Brandon Davis, the host of Front Row Classics. What's up, Brandon?
I am stuffed from the weekend, but
Yes. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
had a great Thanksgiving. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was wonderful. Yep. And I appreciate Thanksgiving being so early. That means we get almost like an extra week for the Christmas season.
I know,
So
right?
that's always a good thing.
We get like an extra week of legitimate Christmas music playing, not this November 1st crap. Yeah,
Right.
Fight me, people. Anyway, so we just wanted to we love doing this. We love kind of looking forward to the movies that are going to be coming out in the next season. Movie seasons shift all the time, but the winter season really kind of does stay the same. It's kind of that mid-November through February-ish time. Normally that's about around March when the spring season would start, but it seems nowadays that pretty much that's when the summer season starts. But we will still call it spring. But yeah, we're going to basically be taking you through mid-November here all the way up through February and give you all of the movies coming out in those months and what we're looking forward to the most in those months. And then we're going to give you a little bit of an Oscar preview in terms of movies we're hearing that are getting a lot of great buzz that you might want to be on the lookout for around December of this year. So, Brandon, what do you say? You ready to dive into this winter preview?
Let's go for it. There's a lot.
There are a lot. So let's just start here in November. Now, obviously, some of the biggest ones have already happened. So as we said, about the middle of November is usually where it comes out. So in that, you've got Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald. That one's already come out. You have Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet, which just came out. We also have Creed 2, the sequel to Creed, Ryan Coogler's Creed. I think that's the 8th movie in the entire Rocky franchise. Now it's just amazing how up in number those are getting there. Also, if you haven't read, Lou Hare, our columnist, has written a ton of articles on the frontrowmoviereviews.com about the Rocky franchise. I'm getting the feeling he's a fan. So those are the big heavy hitters that have come out. There is a horror film coming out later this month called The Possession of Hannah Grace. So that's pretty much what's going to close out the month, and then the prestige drama The Mercy with Rachel Weisz and Colin Firth. So Brandon, what stood out to you so far in November? I know you've seen a lot of these movies. Which ones that have already come out really stood out to you?
I saw Fantastic Beasts last Sunday, and we're not doing a full disclosure here, so I'm not going to give away because I don't think you've seen it yet either.
I have not.
But I parts of it are better than the sum, in my opinion. I really like where they're heading. I just think that J.K. Rowling thought she was writing a novel and not a screenplay. So it's a little all over the place, but the performances are very good and totally worth seeing. And I think it's a nice follow up to the first one. But I think where it's heading is even more interesting. So I'll just leave everybody there with that.
That's cool.
But we've had. I know that we've had members of the Front Row crew, who have seen. I know Brett went to see Wreck-It Ralph 2 twice on opening day, so that tells you anything.
That should tell you a little something. Even with Brett being a super Disney fan, that should tell you a little something about how good that is.
And then we just got word that Lou and Scott both have seen Creed 2 and loved it, so I'm looking forward to that as well because I love the first one.
Yeah, I think that Creed 2 is kind of an interesting enigma to me because Creed was just so good in the way that it completely redefined and reshaped that whole franchise of movies. And obviously anything you do with Michael B. Jordan, that guy is an insanely good actor and just about to hit the stratosphere, I think. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to seeing Wreck-It Ralph 2, Creed 2, and The Crimes of Grindelwald. Me and my wife, of course, are huge Harry Potter fans, so it's actually a pretty strong November, mid-November there.
And a movie that came out a little earlier, but I just want to kind of stick up for because I know it's gotten a little bit of a beating with some of the press. I really enjoyed Bohemian Rhapsody.
Mention that just real quick.
For just Rami Malek's performance is a wonder to behold. Oscar buzz, I think, definitely for him coming up. But I know it got some flack because unlike a lot of music biopics, it's mainly positive. You certainly see some negative in it.
Sure.
And it certainly does deal with, aspects. But what we have to remember is the members of Queen who are still living and Freddie Mercury himself were very private people. And so we don't know a lot of the facts that went on. And they are the living members of Queen are producers of this movie, and they're telling the story they want to tell. And the story they want to tell is the legacy of music that Queen has left behind and all of that. And from that standpoint, it's a very successful movie with an incredible performance by Malik. So,
I hear you.
While it might not be the movie that a lot of people wanted to see, I think when you take it for what it is, it's just fine.
Yeah, and well, obviously this movie's been in development for a long time, and that was the big point of contention because originally it was Sacha Baron Cohen who was set to play Freddie Mercury, but he left the project when they wouldn't allow him to bring in those grittier parts. So definitely this is the movie that Queen wanted made. And look, Rami Malek is a rising star very quickly in the entertainment industry. And so I agree with you. I can't wait to see this performance. I've only seen clips so far, but I'm hoping that at the very least, if the movie isn't as good as critics wanted it to be, I certainly hope that his performance gets a little bit of love.
Oh, I would hope so. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for November. So let's just dive headlong. One more thing I'll just get to November. Like I said, a couple of interesting horror films coming out at the end, which is really weird for November. Like normally you don't get some wide release horror films, but The Possession of Hannah Grace looks absolutely crazy. It's about this mortician, this female mortician at night who gets this cadaver that came in that was apparently the death of an exorcism. And apparently the corpse starts haunting her in some way. So I mean, like the trailers are very frightening. And just this little indie thing that a friend of mine told me about. It's called Anna in the Apocalypse. It's described as a comedy, fantasy, horror musical. So I don't know. Take what you want from that, but it was a darling of the Cannes Film Festival. So you might want to check that one out if you're into that sort of genre, the comedy horror musical genre, because there's so many of those, Brandon.
Yes, there are. Sweeney Todd and what else?
Little Shop, I guess. Who knows? All right, well, let's get into December then, because there are a lot of movies to talk about here. December is packed. Obviously, this is the month usually when all of the big, heavy Oscar hitters start coming out. So December 7th, we've got a possible prestige drama here with Mary, Queen of Scots, starring Margot Robbie and Saoirse Ronan. Also, my boy David Tennant, represent. Also there on the 7th, we've got another prestige drama starring Julia Roberts and Lucas Hedges called Ben is Back. That could definitely be another one. So that first weekend's a lot of prestige dramas right there. Then as we get into December 14th, we got a lot of really cool stuff coming here with the animated feature Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That one looks absolutely crazy. Clint Eastwood's latest offering as a lead star and director, The Mule. That's coming out on the 14th. Also, Peter Jackson produced The Mortal Engines. That's coming out on the 14th. And then as we get into the 21st, now we're getting into some really crazy stuff here. Aquaman, starring Jason Momoa, the latest from the DC universe. That'll be coming out on December 21st. Also there, the latest in the Transformers franchise, Bumblebee, will be coming out on December 21st. Brandon, I think the one you and I are going to be in front row for, Mary Poppins Returns, is also opening on December 21st. So that is a nuts weekend at the movies. One other one I'd call out there is Steve Carell's drama with Robert Zemeckis, Welcome to Marwen. That's also coming out there, so a little counter programming. Then as we're closing out the month here on December 28th, we have Holmes and Watson, the Sherlock Holmes adaptation from Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly. Take what you want from that. We got Vice, the biography of Dick Cheney, as played by Christian Bale. That's directed by the Big Short director Adam McKay. We got The Destroyer, which is Nicole Kidman's newest Oscar bait, I think. And then, of course, closing out the month, there is another John C. Reilly vehicle, Stan and Ollie, with Steve Coogan, who play Laurel and Hardy, the famous comedy duo from way back in yesteryear. So this is a packed month, Brandon. What stands out to you from that list of movies?
Wow. Well, I'll start with the less obvious, because I think that'll take up more of the conversation later. But I'm interested to see how they pull off Mary, Queen of Scots, because this is I'm trying the last. The BBC and other studios in England have done versions of Mary Queen of Scots, but I'm trying to think. I think the last time Hollywood tackled Mary Queen of Scots was in the 30s with Katharine Hepburn. I can't think of
I
another
think you're
version
right.
since then.
I think the major ones.
So it'll be interesting to see how they bring it to 2018. But yeah, I mean, a very, very dramatic story, and costume period pieces. They're hit or miss with the American public, so we'll see if they take to this version or not. But I'm interested to see it.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you haven't seen the trailers yet, Margot Robbie is unrecognizable as Elizabeth I. Just looks really crazy, and of course, Saoirse Ronan. Pretty much all she has to do is release a movie in December, and it's an Oscar nomination. So, at a very young age, I'm very interested in this director too. Her name is Josie Rourke, and she's done a ton of live stage productions, including Much Ado About Nothing with David Tennant and Catherine Tate over in London. So I'm very interested to see what she's going to bring cinematically to this. This is obviously a big Shakespearean feeling drama and story that actually happened. So you're right. I'm very much looking forward to that one as well. I'll also call out just from the Prestige drama one, Ben is Back. That looks like Julia Roberts kind of returning to her, acting chop street cred type stuff. She's got a show on Amazon Prime right now, Homecoming, that she's getting rave reviews for. And apparently it's kind of a Bohemian Rhapsody situation. The critics that have seen it have said the movie is a little uneven, but her performance is definitely Oscar worthy, is from what I'm hearing.
I've missed Julia Roberts. I'm glad she's back.
Right.
I always liked Julia Roberts, and I think she always kind of got a bad rap for being more of a movie star than an actress. I mean, that might be true, but I think her talents are unsung. A lot of
times. Definitely. I mean, like Julia Roberts is one of the actress treasures in this country, and so many times you get caught up in the movie star. It's kind of Tom Cruise syndrome, I think. You get caught up in the movie starness of her that you forget. Oh yeah, she's actually really, really good at this too. So I'm glad that she did a streaming drama. Maybe that'll help her out a little bit. So yeah, that first weekend is just filled with those. I'm very much interested in The Mule, Clint Eastwood's new one. This is very interesting. Like Clint Eastwood always does this. Like I first saw this trailer right before A Star Is Born, and it's just like all of a sudden he always just finds, like, he doesn't tell anybody about these things. There's never a trailer before like November, and then you see the trailer and you're just like, geez, that looks incredible.
I know.
So what do you think? Are you looking forward to The Mule there?
Yeah, anytime you're ready to count Eastwood out, he comes back with a sucker punch.
Yeah, you're right. You are absolutely right.
And yeah, I remember seeing it and I'm like, man, we haven't seen Eastwood on screen in a little while. And so it's interesting to see him back again, and it doesn't look like it's lost any of his chops. And to see this with the whole sort of Mexican drug cartel theme to it, it's going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah, and a dynamite cast too there with Michael Pena, Bradley Cooper, Taissa Farmiga, a really, really good cast around him.
Absolutely.
Just from the comic book fanboy in me, I'm very much looking forward to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This is the animated film that Sony Animations is putting out there. The animation style just looks like something I've never seen before in a mainstream animated feature. And, for everybody that wants to give the best animation Oscar to Incredibles 2, you might want to hold your horses here, because it looks like this feature is trying to do stuff that no other animated film has done before. And it's really playing off of that Spider-Man lore in a lot of different ways. So I think that's going to definitely win that weekend, but I think, it's going to be interesting to see how good it could be. But let's just get to it, dude. The 21st, those three movies right there, Aquaman, Bumblebee, and Mary Poppins Returns. Obviously, you and I, we want to see Mary Poppins Returns the most.
Absolutely.
We are theater people. We worship at the altar of Julie Andrews. I'm also very interested in Aquaman because I do like what Jason Momoa does with that character in the DC films. And I love Jason Momoa as an actor. So here's my question to you. I think we both know the ones that we want to see there. Which one of those three do you think wins the box office that weekend?
I don't know. It's because it's Disney versus comic book, and both of them have kind of been, over the last decade, have been the two box office champions, really. Because Christmas, because that whole time is much more, you see more kids and more families out to the movies. I see Mary Poppins as maybe being the winner of that one weekend, and then maybe Aquaman overtakes it the next weekend.
Yeah, something like that. I think, ask this question, 6 months ago, it'd be like, oh, of course it's Aquaman. Comic book movies always win the weekend.
Yeah.
Man, there is some great buzz building for Mary Poppins Returns.
Yeah.
And I mean, not just the typical buzz you would expect, but, we're getting a lot of word right now that this is really a very worthy successor to the Julie Andrews vehicle from the 60s. Everybody in this just seems perfect. It seems like they are really playing on the nostalgia, but also really kind of forging their own path too. And obviously if you've got Lin-Manuel Miranda behind it, it's always a good call.
2020 did an hour-long special on it last night that I watched, and to see they interviewed Rob Marshall, they interviewed Mark Shaman and Scott Whitman and Emily Blunt and Lin-Manuel and all those people, and this is not a run-of-the-mill, just going through the motions sequel remake. This is something that they've worked hard at. This is something they've thought about and everything. And just hearing, they didn't really play the full score, but Shaman and Whitman plucked out some of the new tunes they've written on the piano, and they sound like something that could have been out of the Disney canon from years ago. And
they said very Sherman Brothers-y.
They said Richard Sherman got to see the movie early last month or something like that. And apparently I don't know if he sent them a telegram or called them or they said, I feel like Bob and I started this relay and we passed you the baton and you've crossed the finish line with it or something.
Man. Well, for those of you who aren't familiar with those names, if you've got a group of people writing music for you, that is Mark Shaman, Scott Whitman, and Lin-Manuel Miranda, you're in a good place musically. Those are three giants of Broadway. I think that this movie looks incredible, and I cannot wait to see it. Just to close out the month here, look, if you're into Farrell and Riley, cool, go see Holmes and Watson. Personally, I am, and that doesn't really interest me that much. I just think there's like a lot of really good versions of Sherlock Holmes out there right now, whether Sherlock on the BBC with Benedict Cumberbatch or Elementary with Johnny Lee Miller on CBS. And then, of course, even the Robert Downey Jr. Jude Law films from a couple of years ago. I just think, I don't know why you're mining, Sherlock Holmes for like a slapstick Farrell Riley comedy. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Going back though to Aquaman though, real quick, I didn't. I'm new to all this superhero stuff and everything, but I know the big complaints about DC lately, but I will say from the trailer, this seems a little more Marvelish to me than the last batch of DC.
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. It's like, well, this is James Wan, who is really showing his, action movie muscles recently. And yeah, I think, he decided like, screw it. I'm just going to make a really bright, fun looking movie. And it does look that way. And it looks like they're really kind of playing off of what Jason Momoa does best as an actor too. So I agree with you. I think I'm optimistic about this movie. Whether or not it saves the DCEU, who knows? Nothing can save that. But there aren't Stan and Ollie, I think, is not going to get as much love as it probably deserves, because Coogan and Riley in that look dead ringers, and they look like they are perfectly cast in that movie.
And this is an interesting story because, Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy worked so well together as a team, and yet in real life weren't terribly close. So it, and they're playing some of that, and it's kind of Hollywood lore that really hasn't been told all that much. So this is going to be a very interesting biopic, and also it's a British made film, so it's probably not going to be distributed as widely here in the US. Which is probably another reason why the box office might disappoint or whatever. But I could see Oscar buzz for it down the line.
Yeah, so. And well, what's interesting to me is like what the trailers are showing us of John C. Reilly certainly seemed Oscar baity for a lead performance or supporting performance nomination. But I wonder if Holmes and Watson isn't as good as it looks. I wonder if there's kind of an Eddie Murphy syndrome with Dreamgirls, where something that wasn't very good released really close to this prestige thing that you're going for an Oscar for kind of downgrades you a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that.
Only other thing I'll say for this month, Vice looks so interesting. Christian Bale looks exactly like Dick Cheney. I mean, it is scary.
Who would have ever thought Christian Bale is Dick Cheney? That just does.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, just in that, I mean, the trailer is cut brilliantly, but like the way he's speaking is just like you get that sinister, like, killer instinct thing behind this guy. I mean, it's a brilliant trailer. And of course, Adam McKay and that team behind The Big Short, I mean, they've just been on fire recently, and I cannot wait to see them tackle this one. What about you?
I'm really interested. You know, we haven't seen like a big political biography in a while, and it's interesting to do it. You know, it's recent history. You know, Dick Cheney's still around, so
exactly.
And it's funny, you know, how we look back. You know, with the current political climate the way it is, how we look back on, you know, administrations of the past have kind of changed. So it'll be interesting to see
how he influenced it too. Definitely.
So it'll be interesting to see how that happens. And also we kind of glossed over, but Welcome to Marwen just seems incredibly original.
I mean, like, there's not a lot known about the plot right now, but you know, basically if you read just from IMDb itself, just, you know, it stars Steve Carell, director Robert Zemeckis, about a victim of a brutal attack. He finds a unique and beautiful therapeutic outlet to help him through his recovery process, which I believe is making miniature models. And then like somehow those models like come to life with him in it inside his imagination. Looks like one of those Robert Zemeckis vehicles that is just very original and going to be a ton of fun to watch. All right, you ready to head into 2019?
Yeah, Green Book has already been released, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I figured we could talk about that with the Oscar.
We'll talk about that
stuff at the end, because there's another one that's already been released that I think is some Oscar bait as well.
Okay, cool.
So here's the thing, people. January and February aren't known as the best months in the movie landscape. Most of the time, everybody's looking at the dramas that are getting Oscar nominations, you know, that are getting re-released in January. So it's typically seen as
and people are going to see the big December blockbusters again in January.
Yes, exactly. So January has typically not been a very good month for movies. It's often known as the dumping ground or the wasteland of the movie industry. Now that's sort of changed. We've had a few really good gems the past couple of years in January, but for the most part, you're going to get some horror films that the studios gave up on, or some dramas that you know, they thought might be some Oscar bait, but then, you know, once they get the final cut, they're like, let's just dump it here in January and see what happens here. So right now, the release schedule, January 4th, pretty much the only thing on here, we've got Escape Room, which is a pseudo horror thriller about 6 strangers that find themselves in one of those escape rooms that are so popular right now, except shocker of shocks, somebody's actually trying to kill them in it. So that's pretty much the biggest release there on January 4th. January 11th, not a ton of stuff. So The Upside with Nicole Kidman and Bryan Cranston. Ad Astra with Brad Pitt and Tommy Lee Jones. That could be something interesting there. A little bit of a drama, sci-fi mystery. You know, and it's got, look, a good cast there. Brad Pitt, Tommy Lee Jones, Donald Sutherland, Ruth Negga. But January 18th is really where I'm looking, because that's where we're getting Glass, the follow-up to 2017 Split from director M. Night Shyamalan, that's also merging his Unbreakable film together into one giant sequel to both of those. And then to close out the month, January 25th, we have a drama thriller called Serenity, starring Diane Lane, Anne Hathaway, Matthew McConaughey, and Jason Clarke. It reads that the mysterious past of a fishing boat captain comes back to haunt him when his ex-wife tracks him down with a desperate plea for help, ensnaring his life in a new reality that may not be all that it seems. I mean, if that could be the most generic movie description ever, I think it would be. Brandon, what sticks out to you here from January?
Well, I figured when escape rooms became popular that they were going to do a horror movie about them sooner or later. So whether or not
it took this long,
so whether or not the movie's any good or not, it just shows that escape rooms have entered the zeitgeist.
Exactly.
But no, you know, as you mentioned, of the batch of January movies, Glass is the only one that really sort of sticks out.
The only one that catches my eye.
Yeah. And just looking at Samuel L. Jackson's appearance in the movie, it's worth it.
I'm telling you. Well, I mean, look, Split was a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
And it really kind of, I think, The Visit was M. Night's kind of return to form.
Yeah.
And this was really his return to, okay, here's the talent that I have. So he kind of got himself right with The Visit, and then with Split, he was just like, okay, I'm back. And I'm very interested to see what he can do here, because Split was great, and Unbreakable is always seen as still one of his best movies as well.
Right.
So now merging those so many years later into one giant sequel for both of the films, it's something I don't think that has been tried before in movies.
Right.
So I'm going to be very interested to see how it works. But, you're right. Bruce Willis, James McAvoy, Samuel L. Jackson, just all right there in the same movie. And throw in Sarah Paulson for good measure. Sure, why not?
It's a great cast. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't have anything else for January. I'm not seeing anything else in January.
No, poor January never gets a break.
I know, right? Well, maybe I'll see Mary Poppins for the 18th time. Yeah. All right, well, let's go into February then here. This is going to be the last month that we highlight. February 1st is the first weekend there. The biggest one that's looking like it's coming out there is there's one called The Informer, starring Rosamund Pike and Joel Kinnaman. An ex-convict working undercover unintentionally gets himself incarcerated again in order to infiltrate the mob at a maximum security prison. I'm a huge fan of Joel Kinnaman. I really like what he does on The Killing and everything else, especially Altered Carbon on Netflix. The only other one on this weekend that's interesting, and it's only interesting because I didn't know it existed, Brandon, but apparently they remade Jacob's Ladder.
I just found that out when I was doing research for this. I don't know.
They remade Jacob's Ladder, and my first question is why, but okay.
Yeah. I mean, talk about when I was talking about Mary Poppins, unnecessary run-of-the-mill remakes. I think this might fall into that category.
I'm telling you, man. Well, going forward, February 8th, I'm so looking forward to this. The release of the Lego Movie 2, the second part. I freaking loved the first Lego movie. I cannot wait to see what they do with the second one. There's a comedy coming out called What Men Want, which is kind of a same universe thing of What Women Want, the Mel Gibson movie from the early 2000s there. There is another Liam Neeson thriller coming out called Cold Pursuit. I believe that it's Liam Neeson. Yeah, it is. Taken in the Snow, I guess. Coming out on February 15th, we have Happy Death Day 2. That was actually a really good movie that I loved. We got Robert Rodriguez's adaptation of the comic book Alita Battle Angel, also coming out that month. The Rebel Wilson comedy fantasy, Isn't It Romantic, where a girl who hates romantic comedies finds herself inside a romantic comedy. Interesting there we could talk about. And then closing out the month of February is How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, the latest in that very long franchise. So Brandon, what sticks out to you the most from February?
It's interesting. Well, you mentioned that the Lego movie, the first Lego movie turned out to be very good.
So delightful.
And so I'm interested to see what they do with the second one. And also I just thought it's interesting that they're doing What Men Want here now, almost 20 years after the first one, in the same universe, but with a wonderful actress, Taraji P. Henson. I really, really like.
Yeah, that's very interesting to me. I mean, I'm hoping they give it the same flair that they did with the Mel Gibson movie, because that's one of my, I don't know if you'd call it a guilty pleasure, but it's just I like that movie. I really like that movie. I think it's well made.
And it was well received by a lot of critics. So, and this movie is going to be directed by Adam Shankman, who directed Hairspray and directed a lot of. So it should be high energy and quirky. And when you've got an actress like Taraji P. Henson, as long as you write it well, she's going to take the ball and run with it. So,
and it's interesting that they're putting it in the sports agents profession as opposed to the ad agency that Mel Gibson was in. So, lots of really cool stuff there. That's going to be a good weekend, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, and I'm obviously the new Cold Pursuit, the Liam Neeson one. I don't know, standard Liam Neeson. Actually, I'm very interested. Not just because I'm the horror guy, but Happy Death Day to You. Happy Death Day was actually a very interestingly well done movie.
Mhm.
And if you didn't see it, it's basically think Groundhog Day, except what precipitates the day repeating is that a young college student gets murdered every day. And
Yeah.
she has to figure out who's murdering her. And until she does, she keeps waking up in her bed the next morning after
Mhm.
getting horrifically killed each night. It was such an interesting concept, and executed very well. So, this is a very quickly ordered sequel, though. So that's the only thing that worries me about it. Usually, when you order a sequel that quickly, you rush things way too fast, and the story suffers. So that's the only one that gives me a little bit of pause there. And very interested to see what Robert Rodriguez does with Alita: Battle Angel. The
Mhm.
trailer did not get a great reception, especially from the comic book fans, because it looks very CGI heavy. I don't know, but I haven't read that comic book, but I know it is one of the most widely loved and kind of sacred to certain comic book fans. So I'm hoping that he does a good job with that. Is there anything else for the rest of the month there,
Well,
Brandon, that catches your eye?
well, there's another movie that I was looking at. I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but February 14th, Fighting with My Family is coming out, and that
Oh
is
no.
that's a movie I know that Dwayne Johnson produced. I've seen him talk about in different interviews. It's based off of, I don't know, a real life female WWE wrestler. I'm not sure, but it's her it's a true story. It takes place in England, and I
Oh,
think and then happens here, and he's got a little part in it or whatever. But it looks kind of like, I saw just a little bit of it, but it looks kind of like an indie film or whatever. But it just seems like it'd be really, really interesting and something not your run of the mill stuff we see in February. So
yeah, definitely. And I think, yeah, I have heard about that. Um, I think there are a lot of I think there's a lot of stuff that can be gleaned there, and Lou Hare and myself are very big WWE fans here on the front row. So yeah, we're very interested in that as well. So February, like I said, is usually where we start kind of pulling ourselves out of the out of the January doldrums in the movie industry, and then that sets us up right there for March and the springtime. So
and then once March hits, 2019 isn't going to stop.
no. We are going, going, going. All right. Well, we're going to close out this winter movie preview because, as we said, in the wintertime is when all those prestige dramas come out, when all of the Oscar contenders come out, the people that have been going all over the festival circuits and have been getting their bids and offers and are planning their limited releases to get their movies out there. So, Brandon, let's why don't you just throw a few out there? What are you hearing right now from the Oscar buzz? A few films that you're hearing about.
In terms of films, one that's getting a lot of buzz is a movie called Rosa,
Mm-hmm.
which I believe is I think it's like I think it's a Latin drama or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's getting a lot of buzz, and then a movie that we didn't talk about earlier, but A Star Is Born is definitely getting a lot of buzz.
Yeah, Star is Born is getting
Yeah.
a ton of buzz, and I'll tell you, I think deservedly so. I think what director Bradley Cooper and star Bradley Cooper did in that movie is just so fantastic. It's not going to be the first time that story's been nominated for an Oscar, but I would be shocked if he and Lady Gaga did not get nominations, and if that film didn't get nominations. And I could see him getting a director Oscar too. There is some great
I
skill
think
at work behind the camera there.
Yeah, to me, this is what it's going to be a hard fought best actor race because Bradley Cooper, I think, is the front runner as of now. But then I mentioned before, Rami Malek will be right up there, and then we mentioned Green Book, Viggo Mortensen, and Mahershala Ali definitely
I
seem like
mean,
they're
either
going to
of
get
them
up.
could
Yeah,
be. Yeah.
so there's a lot of competition in the best actor category right now.
Yeah, definitely. And there's one that, came out already that, in addition to Green Book, keep your eye on the Front Runner with Hugh Jackman, directed by Jason Reitman.
Yes.
The story of this is insane enough, in the fact that it happened so recently. But obviously I have my personal love of Hugh Jackman. He is my favorite actor, but I always feel like he's never appreciated for the amount of, acting chops that he has. Now, he did get his Oscar nomination for Les Mis a couple of years ago. But I think that, he's got those chops there, and it looks like he is really going all out in this part. Political dramas are in right now. Political everything is in right now. So I think that could be a good one to watch coming up in this season.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And Yeah, it's just so it's interesting. And then I know from the beginning of the year, Black Panther is still getting Oscar buzz, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm really hoping that this happens because, last year the Academy decided, okay, we're not going to be so stuffy. We're going to nominate some films that, people saw um, and actually liked. The biggest beneficiary of that was Jordan Peele's Get Out, which actually won him the Best Original Screenplay Oscar. And won nominations for its star Daniel Kaluuya, and it got a nomination for Best Picture as well. I mean, that one came out in February, just like Black Panther did. Now, I think there's an outside shot that Black Panther does get a Best Picture nomination. I would love to see Michael B. Jordan nominated for Eric Killmonger in that for Best Supporting Actor. And, look, Marvel is really putting all their eggs in that basket. They are putting a huge PR push behind that film right now. And I think it would just be good all around because it is a cultural moment movie. It is a phenomenon movie. And I think that is something that is definitely worthwhile. And, if they toyed around with that whole popular film category this year. And I think that the reason they wanted to do that is because they probably know that there is a lot of buzz for Black Panther, and probably some of the stuffier, Academy people don't want that. So I'm hoping that keeps going. One that I'm hearing a lot of buzz about is The Favorite with Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz. Another kind of British monarchy type movie. And it's from this director, Yorgos Lanthimos, that is very much up and coming over in Europe. And the shooting style just looks so up close and kind of Tom Hooper, but kind of on steroids. You know what I mean? Just really close up camera work there. And I'm getting a lot of buzz about Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz and that. So good to see Rachel Weisz back, isn't it? I mean, she is such a great actress. Yeah. We're also Barry Jenkins, last year's Best Picture winner, Moonlight, that director. He's got a new one coming out called If Beale Street Could Talk. You definitely going to want to watch out for that one. And then I think that Vice is really going to get a lot of good play.
And then another movie that came out with big fanfare, but then just kind of laid an egg when it came out. And I think it's because the first batch of people who saw it were disappointed, was First Man.
Yeah, this is interesting.
Which I saw First Man, and I really, really enjoyed it. I think a lot of people went into it thinking it was going to be another Apollo 13.
Yeah.
But it wasn't so much focused on the space mission as it was about Neil Armstrong's personal life.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's where but Ryan Gosling gives a fantastic performance in that movie. So you definitely could see him on the list as well. Also, Viola Davis is getting buzz for Widows, which recently came out as well.
Heck, man, just give Viola Davis everything ever. Also don't sleep on Spike Lee's film Black Klansman. Great reviews for that, and of course Spike Lee is always in play at the Academy. And the only other one that I would call out is this Melissa McCarthy kind of dramedy called Can You Ever Forgive Me? A lot of people right now, especially it's just are really singing the praises of this. And, like Melissa McCarthy, Richard E. Grant, they're getting a ton of buzz in this. And it really kind of seems like it's in the vein of like a Lady Bird type thing, just kind of a comedy drama that blurs the lines, but really kind of gets in under your skin at the same time. And look, Melissa McCarthy is an Academy Award nominated actress. A lot of people forget this. So, I mean, if you nominated her for a comedy, why not for a drama?
Right. And also just one more, and I don't see him winning, but maybe as a respect, a movie that got very good reviews was The Old Man and the Gun, which Robert Redford has said will be his last acting performance, I believe. So
always that
there could be a respect nomination, given to Robert Redford, who has never won an acting Oscar. He's won a directing Oscar. So there is that, and I could see him and maybe Sissy Spacek also getting nominated out of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Man, just so much stuff. And then look, like we just named a bunch of stuff for you, and then there's going to be a Moonlight. There's going to be some film that just comes out of nowhere that just, that has gotten no budget or no publicity, and all of a sudden it's going to be the front runner. So, like it's going to happen. So just get ready for it. I mean, nobody knew about La La Land until it actually happened.
Right.
Like that kind of a thing. And nobody knew about Moonlight before it happened. So, all right. that's going to do it, man. We just previewed the winter season and gave you a little bit of an Oscar buzz, all right? Because that's what we do. All right, so for the rest of the month on the Front Row Network, you will be hearing the next episode of Classics. Brandon, why don't you tell them a little bit?
The next episode of Classics, which I recorded earlier this month with Brett Rutherford, we did Now Voyager, which is one that he's been wanting us to do for a while. It had been a while since I'd watched it, but Now Voyager, a melodrama from 1942 starring Bette Davis, Paul Henreid, and Claude Rains, one of the great romantic films of all time. It's on the AFI's list of 100 greatest romances of all time. Just a great drama, great performance by Bette Davis. One of the great scores of all time by Max Steiner, which we talk about. So, and Gladys Cooper, who plays the mother from Hell. And we spend a lot of time talking about that as well. So yeah, that's coming out this month.
Fantastic. And then, of course, you'll be getting a full disclosure on Creed 2. And then we will be closing out the month with a full disclosure Beyond the Mouse crossover for Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet. And then, of course, we are getting into all the Christmas time here at the Front Row. And, of course, watch us online at thefrontrowmoviereviews.com or the Front Row Network on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And, of course, Front Row Reviews with a Z on Twitter. So make sure you follow us there so you can stay tuned to see all the stuff that we're doing for the month of December. We got to get out of here. Thank you so much for enduring this winter preview with us. We'll, of course, be back when all the Oscar nominations come back. And Brandon, you and I will just see how correct we were or how terribly wrong we were.
Which is probably the way it's going to go.
Yeah, most likely the latter. All right, so that's going to do it for us. For the Front Row Network, I'm Jeremy Geckner.
I'm Brandon Davis.
And as always, we will see you in the front row. All right. Thank you, man.
Yeah, that was